All right, guys. More videos, more stuff here. So, I had a chance to read your exit tickets from yesterday, where you gave examples in the wide world of Westerly. And there were some really good examples, some really, really good descriptions. Make sure you go back and you do read the comments that I put. Some people did get a little mixed up with communities, and some people gave examples of living things when they were supposed to do abiotic, etc. So make sure you go back and just take a look at your score and read that. So we're going to be spending some time the next couple of days watching and studying populations. We'll look at other people doing it. I'm going to ask you to try and go do that. So I wanted to take a few minutes to do a really short video to actually a video within a video. You're so lucky. Um, to just talk about a couple of things that you need to know in order to actually be an ecologist if you were going to go and study a population or a community. So I'm going to start off with if we were in class, we were going to study a type of bug called milkweed bugs. I've been growing them, if you will. They live in a bag, but we're not in school, we're at home. So I've actually made another little video that I'm going to ask you to pause. This is only like about a minute long. If you want to meet the bugs, you can kind of see them. You can see my ugly face poking around in there. But I show you some close-ups of the bugs. They're not in their natural habitat. They're in a bag. But I'm going to ask that you pause this video. If you go back to Classroom, you'll find a link for this one, and you can actually watch that just so you can see them. No big deal, but make sure you do that. So when you do see those bugs, a couple of things, like obviously they're bugs. I want you to think about a couple of things, like how would you categorize them? They're not an individual because there's more than one there. So it's most likely it's a population, really. So now I have them in a bag habitat. You can watch that other video and see. But where would they usually live in an environment? I can tell you they're called milkweed bugs. So not to ruin the surprise, but they live in and on milkweed. They actually feed off of milkweed. So think about if they're living organisms. We can't forget that if you're alive, you need to be able to do things. You need materials. You need abiotic things to live. So if you go back and watch that video, just make sure that you do take a second and think about. Um, there's more than one biotic factor in there, and what are some of the abiotic factors? Make sure that you can identify them. So I'm telling you it's a population, but if you look closely and you think about number 4 in that other video, that bag o' bugs actually might even be technically is an ecosystem, depending on how you look at it, because there are both biotic and abiotic factors. So make sure again you take a look at that other video. Um, Now, it's only a model of natural habitats. Those bugs don't really live in a bag. So, just wanted to make a point that keep in mind that when you study organisms in their natural habitats, you'll get a better picture of them. But sometimes, like in anything in science, we talked about models. Sometimes it's better to study a smaller version, and you still get a lot of information. So, just keep in mind when you watch that other little video, you meet my bugs. What are some limitations of me keeping them inside of a bag habitat? Yeah, I get to study them and look at them, but do I really get to see them in full? Do I get to see everything about them? So keep that in mind. Now, Foss actually wanted you at this point to go and read something in a book, read 2 or 3 pages about the idea of observations versus inferences. I'm not going to make you read that. I figured I can actually just go over that really quickly with you uh, right now in this video. So, what you're going to need to be able to do later today, tomorrow, this weekend, and even next week when we start to study populations and communities is that as a scientist, you're going to be able to make observations, but you're also going to be able to make inferences. And they're easy, but they can get a little bit tricky. So, I wanted to go over with you what the differences are and give you some examples. So, um, scientists do both, but sometimes a lot of people get mixed up and they think when they're saying this, uh, or excuse me, rather, they think when they're saying observations, they're actually making inferences. So I want to go over and give you some examples what they actually are. So an observation is a fact. It's factual information, but there's a catch to that. And it has to be factual information that is readily observable. You can get that information with your senses. You can see it, you can hear it, you can touch it, you can measure it. You have to be able to actually get that information with your senses. So there are a couple different types of observations, and you're going to be practicing these in a little bit. There are qualitative, like the word quality. There can be observations that are qualitative, and that's more where you're describing a quality about something. Like if you're looking at the bugs in their habitat, if you said something like an observation like, oh, this bug is small, or this bug is orange and black, um, they could be true statements, but you're more describing a quality about the bugs. Uh, you could even do that in a non-living thing, like this coffee is hot, this water is cold, that kind of thing. So you're not taking actual real measurements; you're just describing a quality about it. You can also have observations, like we said, but they can be quantitative. No, there's another nerd word. It's too bad we can't put it up on the wall and write it down. Actually, you can write it down in your notebook. But quantitative, like you can notice the word quantity in there. So that's where you're making an observation, but it's got a quantity or an amount, like a specific number. Like if I said this milkweed bug is 1.5 centimeters long, or this milkweed bug has two antennae, or this milkweed bug has two wings, or this milkweed bug has six legs. That's where you're actually, it's an observation, factual information, but you're putting a number on that. So be careful. It has to be something that you can actually observe, see, measure, uh, smell, touch, etc. All right. So those are pretty easy. Usually people don't have trouble with observations. It's inferences that give people a little bit of difficulty. So inferences are a little different. They're explanations or assumptions that people make based on observations, knowledge, experiences, or even opinions sometimes. So you got to be careful. These aren't things you directly observe. You might think you're observing it, but it's when you're inferring. You're trying to put something on that and make an explanation, almost like a guess here. So if you said something like a statement like, this bug is hungry, so it's looking for food, it might look like the bug's walking around, and it might look like the bug, when it settles on food in our habitat, it's eating oils inside of seeds. But you got to be careful. That's an inference. You don't know that for sure. You're inferring, you're implying that the bug is hungry. The bug didn't tell you. You don't know if it's looking for food. Maybe it's looking for water. Maybe it's looking for a mate. Um, but it's an inference you're making. It's kind of like, well, I've seen this and I've seen this with the bugs, so I'm going to go ahead and make an inference that it's hungry and it's looking for food. You have to be careful with inferences. Um, a lot of people sometimes will make an inference and think it's a fact, and it might not be true. We might not say that that bug is there, but if you have a lot of observations and you see other bugs walking around and they stop when they get to the seeds and they're eating, and you see another bug doing that, then it's okay. It's kind of like you're saying, I'm making a guess here. All right. So just be careful on observations and inferences. We'd want to know what they are. You don't have to put necessarily, I know it's a little different doing this from home with a notebook, but make sure you know observations and inferences, because real quickly before I go, we're going to want to make sure, like if I have this habitat and we're going to be studying, like for example, milkweed bugs or any other population, you're going to have to be able to, if you want to know the most about them, and take a lot into account how they interact and what they need to survive, you're going to have to be able to make, oftentimes write them down in a notebook, observations, and then make inferences. All right. So with that, I will leave you guys alone, and I'm going to think about that. I'm going to ask you to go and you can complete an exit ticket, a short little Google form.